My new series of Scream related videos has officially started. I'm taking a deep dive into the Scream franchise, which will allow me to go further and further into the lore and backstory of some of Scream's most iconic serial killers that have ever donned the ghost face mask. This type of content comes from comments by directors, cast and crew, and is pieced together through my own writing. To make sure you don't miss out on this awesome Scream content, be sure to hit subscribe and make sure you sign up for notifications so you don't miss a single update. In today's installment, we're taking a look at the dark and twisted mind of Billy Loomis. So we all know that Billy and Stu murdered Maureen Prescott 1 year prior to the events of Scream 1996. However, after studying Billy's behaviour, notes from Kevin Williamson about the character, things like he enjoys killing so much and so on, I find it very difficult to believe Billy sat dormant for a whole year without a single incident. Well, based on this fresh batch of writing I've done for this character, I now have this entire moment that occurred sometime before Casey's death in 1996, but after Maureen's murder in 1995. The basis here was that Billy was messing around with other girls behind Sydney's back. One of the major things I wanted to include here was his lust for killing and how that side of him didn't disappear following Maureen's death. To shed light on this situation, I added a section where Gail Weathers obtained the diary of Billy Loomis in preparation for the writing of her first book. So without further ado, let's take a look at the moment Billy Loomis attacked a young girl before the events of Scream 1996. Gail sat back in her desk chair and sipped her half-empty glass of red wine. She was exhausted. Press screenings after press screenings and a scathing remark from some residents of Woodsboro was enough to make anyone feel the heat. Still, as she sipped her wine, surrounded by all her papers, books and case files within her dimly lit office, she couldn't help but wonder, how much money will all this sell for? Gail placed her glass of wine down. It was thundering outside, something she'd come accustomed to in the winter months. All she had to light her way was a small desk lamp, which illuminated the entire work area. Rested on the desk, taking up a central position, was a diary, an old leather book. It was thicker than usual, as pages appeared to have seen a lot of activity. To some, this was an old book, possibly owned by a middle-aged gentleman who had decided to write down some of his many adventures on paper. That would have made for an interesting read. However, this wasn't in fact the diary of a middle-aged man who was writing down his adventures for a future generation. This was the diary of a serial killer, Billy Loomis. Gail had witnessed the massacre and true horror of Billy up close and personal. However, she was apprehensive about reading the diary. Sheriff Burke had reminded her that this was no light read. But this was for research purposes, she told herself. She placed the glass down on her desk and she picked up the diary. As Gail took one deep breath, she opened up the book and began scrolling through the pages. She didn't know what she was expecting, but this wasn't a typical Dear Diary diary. In fact, it was more the ramblings and dark thoughts of someone who was tormented by his own voices inside his head. I got home from the Prescotts last night. I felt sick. This wasn't the same as the movies made it seem. Seeing Maureen cut open, all her flesh exposed to the bone, it didn't hit me at first, but as soon as I walked in, I threw up everywhere. It was the shittest feeling I've ever felt. But the adrenaline was fucking brilliant. I think I'm done now though. Everything was taken care of. Now to just get Stu to stick to the story. Gail continued turning the pages. Sydney still won't put out. How much longer does she need to mourn her dead whore mother? It's fine though, I've managed to find some girls in school who are happy to do anything I ask. I hope Sydney drags this on longer. It's fascinating watching her so devastated for her mother. Now she knows how I feel. As Gail continued turning the pages, she came across the largest entry yet, set 9 months after Maureen's death. I may have fucked up last night. I spent the entire night at Lisa's. This wasn't the first time we had sex, but it was probably the last. Her parents were out, we did our usual stuff, but this strange thing kept happening to me. I was looking down at her during, and all I saw was Sydney. The same hair, the same face, laughing, screaming my name. I'd begun to slow down. The whole thing caught me off guard for a moment. She didn't seem to notice, but she suddenly went back to looking like Lisa again. Then, I fucked her again, but I noticed she looked back at me, face forward. Sydney, staring at me. When the whole thing was over, I went to her bathroom and took a moment. Hatred filled me. Maureen was dead, but Sydney really pisses me off. She's so selfish. She makes out her mum was this perfect woman, the perfect mum. She didn't know her, or she did, and she just didn't care. When I walked back into the bedroom, I saw her, Sydney, laying in bed, naked, half asleep, but her eyes were open slightly. She looked at me with suggestive eyes. I walked over to her and placed my hands around her neck. "Billy, cut it out, you're hurting me," I heard her say. But it wasn't Sydney's voice. I didn't care. She needed to die. She fucking needs to die. I clenched my hands tighter and tighter. She began smacking my hand. Eventually, I released her. My hands, I snapped back into reality, and Lisa was going crazy, telling me to go, asking me what I was doing. I didn't see Sydney anymore. Sydney wasn't this pathetic. I lied. Thankfully, she bought it. I just wanted to get rough, I told her. When I got home, I realised from what just happened, I really needed to strengthen my hands up. If I ever get the urge, if Sydney ever does put out for me again, that could be my perfect time. But my hands, they can't hold for long. I need more time to practice. Gail closed the book firmly shut. She stared at it for a moment. She finished off her glass of wine before deciding she'd continue the book in the morning. The Diary of Billy Loomis is something I thought would have provided an interesting read overall. This character was a planner. Everything that occurred in 1996 seemed to go as planned every single time, in comparison to Ghostface's who followed. One of the major aspects I think could have worked in Billy's favour is if he documented most of what he was feeling. The strengthening of the hands is relating to Billy's desire to murder his victims via strangulation, and so despite it never being portrayed accurately on screen, it's a very hard task to strangle someone to death without training the hands to prepare for a tight grip over a significant period of time. I hope you've all enjoyed this further insight into the mind of Billy Loomis. Don't forget to like, share, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode of this latest series, and I'll see you guys in the next video.